3 members of a family spend the first 301 days in a nuclear bunker. To their daughter Zoey, Ray and Clarie have always underlined 2 important rules: to always maintain composure and to never leave the refuge. Sadly, a weird viral outbreak has left the world above them abandoned. They are currently the last survivors left. Even though the infection has been going on for 301 days, the situation is still quite perilous since the epidemic is giving birth to terrifying monsters known as breathers who kill people on sight. The setting is changed to the beginning, 301 days ago. The 3-person family has been living in a quiet area when all of a sudden they discover that their neighbors have begun hastily packing to leave town. The neighbors are asked what happened, but instead of responding, they quickly drive away. It turns out that their still existing town of Kingsville has been ravaged by a highly contagious viral outbreak. The residents drive through the roadway to flee their homes out of fear of becoming infected. However, the CDC, which deems the area to be under quarantine, stops them in their tracks midway. A pair of fighter jets dump numerous bombs on the individuals as they exit their vehicles, targeting the terrified onlookers as they flee in terror. Ray guides the family to a local elementary school among the commotion. They locate a hatch leading inside the shelter and enter it just as the fighter jets nearby drop another bomb. Zoey awakens in the present after having a nightmare about the breathers breaking into their refuge. Her mother soothes her, telling her that her dad, Ray, is watching out for her and that she is secure. Claire brings Zoey to meet Ray, who has just finished his watch shift, to allay her worries. Ray gives her one more reassurance that she was secure before permitting her to ascend a ladder leading to the shelter's exit. When Zoey reaches the top, she finds that a variety of locking chains have tightly closed the opening. After witnessing this, a suspicious Zoey is persuaded and goes back to her parents as the family is making their way to the pantry of the shelter. There, Zoey and Claire carry out their morning ritual of drawing a line on a wall to symbolize the start of a new day. As a result, Zoey checks the markings on the wall and discovers that they had been alone in the bunker for a total of 301 days. Zoey is saddened by this knowledge because she doesn't have any friends her age and is sick of living in the depressing shelter. After a little while, Zoey settles down to have breakfast as Claire shops for food on the pantry shelf. They quickly learn, though, that the container is empty. After looking into it, Claire discovers that a rat has gotten into the pantry and devoured the majority of the canned goods, reducing their already meager options. The family also learns that the rat entered the bunker via a different hole than the main barred hatch. The breathers wouldn't be able to fit via the narrow air duct, Ray assures Zoey as they discover it. The family decides to have a plate of beans for breakfast because they have very few options and no more peach cans. Zoey picks at her supper and pouts over the beans as she is dissatisfied. Zoey screams about the poor living circumstances and how she feels trapped up in the shelter, weary of their predicament. As he emphasizes the significance of remaining in the shelter to hide from the breathers, Ray comforts his upset daughter and shows that he understands her. Eventually, Zoey comes around and picks up her food again after Ray makes a joke to cheer her up. Claire joins Zoey in the other room later that evening. When the two of them play Monopoly, Zoey quickly loses interest and becomes bored. When Claire notices this, she gives Zoey a periscope so she can see the sky. When Zoey looks through the device, she expects to see the outside world, but all she sees is a wasteland. Following the brief watch, Zoey comes back to the dining table to play Monopoly with Claire. Zoey notices the rat eating on one of the cans while she is playing and quietly calls her mother. She eventually wakes Ray up and summons him to the pantry as the group considers how to dispatch the rat. After a drawn-out process, Claire finally manages to put the rat down before it can go, but in the process, the rodent accidentally knocks over one of the lights, which explodes and starts a huge fire. While Ray goes to the water pump to obtain some water, Claire quickly arrives with a handkerchief and tries to douse the flames. The defective pump malfunctions once more, prompting Ray to struggle with the lever as Claire cries out to him for assistance. Fortunately, Ray manages to get it going in time, and the two labor together to put out the fierce flames. After the fire was completely put out, the family saw that some smoke was still present, but it had entered the air that was escaping to the ground above. When the family notices this, they reason that the breathers might be able to see the ash on the ground above them and decide to leave the area to avoid being discovered. The pair heads towards the surface to dispose of the remaining ashes after telling Zoey not to leave the shelter. Through the periscope, Zoey observes the couple as they clear the area. She immediately notices a weird figure hiding behind her parents and immediately assumes it is a breather. Zoey shouts to gain her parents' attention, but they can't hear her because they are far away. As she rushes to her parents to alert them of the lurking beast, Zoey disregards their instructions and unlocks the hatch, and flees the shelter. Zoey searches the area outside for them while yelling their names but cannot find them. Claire appears from behind Zoey and covers her mouth to silence her shrill screams. The young girl alerts a couple to the weird figures she spotted behind them as Claire releases Zoey. When the group realizes this, they run to the opening hatch and toward the refuge. The family hears a breather stomping loudly over the overhead earth as they enter the underground facility. They all remain silent to avoid being seen as they listen anxiously to the footsteps on the roof. Zoey's doll causes a scene after her rope unintentionally gets stuck in a nearby pipe just as the footsteps start to fade. Ray is horrified by the doll's sound, so he quickly snatches it and destroys it to stop it from luring the monster in. By the time the breather strikes the doll and violently strikes the hatch leading to the underground bunker, it is too late. When Ray and Claire notice this, they ascend the ladder and successfully wedge the door. Consequently, the monster was prevented from entering. They all exhale in relief as Claire and Ray descend the ladder and rejoin Zoey after no longer hearing any sounds. This doesn't last long, though, as the sounds coming from the roof get louder, indicating that further animals had arrived. The family tries to retrieve another wedge for the hatch, but the breathers shatter it as the heavy metal hits the ground before they can respond. When the group notices this, they dash to another room to get out. Claire throws a lamp into the hallway to buy some time, starting a fire. Then she and Ray use a shelf to block the path even more. After doing this, they look for a different way out and choose to exit through the vents. Claire navigates the narrow gap with Ray's assistance and emerges outside. Upon reaching the overhead ground, Claire looks about and, thankfully, doesn't see any breathers. Ray is promptly informed by Claire, and after hearing this, he assists Zoey in getting through the vents. When the mother and daughter pass through, Ray tries to do the same but is unable to fit in. Ray tries so hard to fit in that he dislocates his shoulder. However, the breathers get through and assault the wounded guy before he can exit the refuge, sending him back inside. When Claire and Zoey glance down, they are shocked to discover a splatter of blood and eventually come to the conclusion that Ray is dead. The two dash through the pitch-black streets for a brief moment of mourning until they arrive at a freeway lined with deserted cars. Then a helicopter emerges in the sky with a powerful headlight. The pair flees in the opposite direction after spotting the helicopter. They don't get very far, though, before a fired net catches them. The breathers emerge from the shadows and surround the pair as they attempt to escape the net. Later we discover that the breathers, who appear to be monsters, are American soldiers donning masks for protection as they emerge into the light. In a scenario that takes place 301 days in the past, Claire and her family can be seen shortly after the aerial assault. When Claire discovers a cut on her hand in the bunker, she shows the rest of the family before it becomes infected and becomes black. The family notices this and understands that the illness is airborne and has already spread throughout the town. Rewinding to the present, the two are advised to remain quiet while the armed, masked men test them for the virus by wiping off the syringe. The troops find that the two are contaminated as they take their blood. Armed soldiers surround them after learning this and get ready to fire. But before they fire the gun, Ray attacks the soldiers with extraordinary power after transforming into a vampire-like creature with black veins and bloodshot eyes. He can take down a few of them, but ultimately he is taken out by the others after they shoot him repeatedly. Here, the full nature of the infection is shockingly revealed. The breathers are just regular people, while the family consists of those who have been infected. Although contagious, the virus is not fatal because those who are affected can lead nearly normal lives as long as they maintain control. The reason Ray and Claire insisted that the audience always be calm at the beginning of the movie becomes clear. The infected may become emotionally out of control and transform into monsters. But if they remain composed, they are just like other people. This, regrettably, does not eliminate the possibility that they are still afflicted and that the army intends to eliminate them all. The soldiers find Claire and Zoey have escaped as they turn to look at the net after finishing Ray. A short while later, Claire changes into the same vampire-like state and effortlessly dispatches 3 of the 4 remaining troops as Zoey hides in a car. But the final soldier standing shoots her, wounding her. A changed Zoey leaps and takes off his face mask, exposing him to the virus just as the armed men are ready to fire the fatal shot. Zoey attempts to murder the soldier, but Claire ultimately intervenes. The two eventually leave the man and continue their search for Ray while walking down the highway. The two find dying Ray lying on the ground a short distance away and soulfully bid their final goodbyes. Soon later, Claire and Zoey notice an incoming helicopter and immediately run down an underground passageway that is concealed by a mass of burnt wood. They stumble across Joey, the son of their neighbors down the street, who they last saw at the beginning of the epidemic a year ago, as the two make their way inside the tunnel. When they enter a hatch that the young boy leads them to, a sewer system is revealed. Other 6 survivors have been residing in the Kingsville sewers for months, Zoey and Claire learn inside. Mother and daughter saw this and are relieved to see that there are others just like them. Zoey descends the hatch to meet the welcoming Mariner urges Deacon to release Enola on his own and approaches him. When Deacon declines, Mariner threatens to drop the flame into the oil reserve,